Morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us on this beautiful morning in this wonderful space. It's an absolute delight to welcome you here to Wasps, to let you know all about what Techscaler is and what it can do for the Highlands and Islands. I'm speaking with a microphone today. This is purely for our online audience. So we're running this event as hybrid. When we move into the Q&A section, I'll be moving this microphone around the room so it doesn't stretch all the way to the back corner. So if it seems a little bit out of reach, if you could just make your way closer to the aisle, please. So welcome. My name is Kelly Gardner. I'm the head of national community for CodeBase. A little bit of housekeeping first. We are not expecting a fire alarm to go off today. If one does, if you could please exit the way you came and gather at the front of the building outside on the lawn in front. The toilets are just out this door and to your left. Without further ado, I'd like to kick off. Our agenda for this morning is we'll kick off now with a presentation from Stephen Drost. We'll then move into a panel and Q&A. And then we'll have networking, and please eat as many bacon rolls as you can. I've got a collection of blue bags at the back, so please feel free to take away a bacon roll for your lunch. We hate waste. The people joining us today are Stephen Drost, our CSO, Audrey, our VP of Place, Jim Newbery, our VP of Education, Mark Sutherland, our HRE for the Highlands and Islands, and Barry McDonald, our VP of Community. Our online host for today is Anaïs, and Kostis is very kindly running all of our technical stuff. So thank you very much, Kostis. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Stephen.
Wow, thank you. Can people hear me okay? I'm trying to modulate between being online and being offline. So first of all, thank you very, very much for those of you who are not CodeBase people for coming today. And hopefully you can see there's a whole lot of CodeBase faces here. So for those of you who are not CodeBase, please interpret this as an intent that we're really trying to scale the business and go to different places and be really, truly present. So it's not just we're doing stuff in Edinburgh and the rest of the world can kind of sort of look and see. So we're really trying to be present and being here. Yeah. So I've got about an hour slotted here, and I've, with all the best will in the world, I've done this talk so many times now that we can either focus on doing the talk and be more informative, hopefully, or we can be more kind of conversational. So would people rather I expand the talk, or would you rather have this faster talk and a longer chat? Any upfront opinions on that? So more conversation then? Cool. So I'll go through it. Please feel free to jump in, raise your hands if you want to query something, push back on something. Also, this explainer is very much within the context of our magic phrase is to say that Techscaler in year 5 is going to be very, very different to Techscaler in year 1. So it's going to be iterative. We're going to change a bunch of stuff. So these are strong beliefs loosely held, as it were. But I'll start now. Cool. So what is Techscaler? Essentially, Techscaler is a kind of piece of infrastructure that the government has created to help startups and help founders come about, essentially. It's chopped into 4 different components, and I'll go through those components today. And again, I can elucidate them as deeply or as shallowly, if that's a word, as you like. So the 4 components are education, mentorship, community, and place. And I'll go through them now. Looking at Techscaler, the first kind of question, I guess, is who is Techscaler for? And it's a fairly complex thing to answer, to be honest. And part of the complexity is around the word startup. Startup can mean lots of different things to lots of different people. So some people see a freelancer as a startup. Some people see an agency as a startup. Some people see a startup as a startup. I guess what we're trying to index on are companies that are trying to build software products. And software products would be things like apps, or I guess we're using Zoom today, an app like Zoom, things like that. Facebook would be a software product company. So those are the kind of companies we're focusing on. And as we focus on those types of companies, and that's our kind of criterion, we're at the same time being super open as to who can build those kind of companies. There's a bunch of persistent mythology around the fact that those kind of companies can only be built by people who've got a technical background, or they only have to be, you know, white guys, or all this kind of stuff. So whilst we're focusing pretty narrowly on software products, we're at great pains to say that anyone can really build this kind of stuff. And frankly, we don't have enough diversity in the space, and we're looking for a whole bunch of different people to try and build things. To continue on this thread, when we look at those kind of software product companies, they're pretty much vertical agnostic. So it can be banking or travel or food, logistics, et cetera, There's a kind of thesis going around at the moment, or it has gone around for the last sort of 10 years. And that thesis is that software is eating the world. And that means that whatever we do nowadays, be it manage our financial affairs, find a place to live, find the loves of our lives, order foods, travel, etc. Whatever thing you can think of, software has been injected into that process. And effectively, all new companies in that sense are software companies. So Techscaler is super vertical agnostic, you can be anything, come from any kind of place. Okay, let's anchor on the different components. We'll start with education. Education has got 5 components. I know you can see 4 large shapes there and 1 small one. I'll go through those now. At the very beginning, we have Startup Basics. This is a module where people can come on and be exposed to what a startup is, can be exposed to what the kind of language is, examples. Essentially, it's just a bunch of content that we've created that people can have a look at in their own pace, in their own time. There's no real commitment other than sort of looking at it. There's a bunch of see it to be it interviews with founders, et cetera, et cetera. The next progression point is Startup First Steps. This is a 10-week course. I've got a bunch of slides later on that go into more depth what these things are, but I'll just give you the sort of headlines for now, where you sort of learn how to sort of build a startup. The third component is Startup Next Steps, which is focused on, again, a 10-module course where you come in with a cohort and continue to build what you're doing. At that point, Techscaler genuinely actually kind of steps back. Please don't think Techscaler is a kind of hand-holding mechanism from genesis of an idea all the way to a sort of IPO or something like that. It's just this piece of infrastructure to help you. And it's modular and structured in that way, but it's also totally cognizant of the fact that we're not the only thing in the world. And, you know, people, as they go on a kind of journey, you go from a kind of generalist starting point to a kind of more specific journey. And as you do that, you'll, you know, have to find your own spaces, your own places. So the fourth piece we're calling a gap. And I know some people here who help startups as well. That's kind of the place where, you know, we'd love to signpost to you and say, hey, we've set this thing up. We've got a bunch of super general content. We've got a program step 1, program step 2. And then we really, you know, go, hey, if you're doing, I don't know, travel, or if you're doing food or something like that, here are people who are more specifically skilled to help you on your next steps, et cetera, et cetera. The fifth and final point for now is a program delivered via a partner of ours called Reforge. Reforge are California-based, a bunch of people who are ex-Twitch, ex-Uber, ex-HubSpot, so people like that. And they are a partner once you get to the vicinity of what's called product market fit. And if you like, we can go into the technical definitions of those things in more depth. But for now, just quick show of hands. Do people know what product market fit is? Yeah, okay, cool. Awesome. There's so many definitions of it. My favorite one is you get sudden growth and you don't know why. Yeah, let's talk about resilience a little bit. Also trying to show that whilst we're creating a sense of progression, hopefully. People who come on to Techscaler need to know that they can roll in, roll out, spin out at multiple different points. It's an odd one to convey sometimes to areas where startup ecosystems are perhaps more emergent, and that includes, you know, the entirety of Scotland. But if you're in a place like, I don't know, San Francisco or Paris or London or Berlin or something, it's super common to do multiple programs at the same time and to do 3 bits of program 1 and 5 bits of program 2 and sort of mix and match, because the abundance of stuff that's around you as you're building. So we're trying to emulate that and trying to bring that into our thinking. And another sort of journey point is that startups very often fail. You know, the truth of the matter is, it is a culture of failure. It's a culture where sort of 90% of the stuff doesn't work. What we're really trying to help people understand is that resilience is what counts, really. So if you fail, it's about getting up again, trying again, or it's about joining something that is working out. So the kind of venture capital mathematics kind of piece says, you know, 90% will fail, but the 10% or so that does make it will grow extraordinarily big and fast. And those are the places where the people who didn't make it can kind of spin in. So that's the kind of storytelling that we're trying to apply to this. So multiple places to come in and out, and multiple ways to see yourself, to grow. Let me dwell on this just for a second, because there are so many misconceptions on this. Very often, for example, some of you might be aware, might not be aware of the fact that once a startup gets past the kind of product market fit moment, and they go on the venture capital journey, about 75% or so of founders who have been the CEO at that point are no longer the CEOs. They'll drop out, and professional CEOs will come in, and you'll change your role and all that kind of stuff. And very often people will find that their happy space is taking a company through that kind of idea maze, it's called, that very early stage of working out what the hell this thing is. And once you get it, you start to realize that running the company. So the shift from working in the company to working on the company, again, 75% of the time or so, is just not what people enjoy doing. It's a super rare journey that people stick with it forever. And again, we're just trying to normalize that, because if you haven't done this before, you might feel kind of strange and odd that, oh my God, I love doing all this stuff, and I work day and night for it, and now I've got here, it's not what I love anymore, and where do I go? And we're just trying to sort of signify that those thoughts are normal, and just bubble up in a more mature ecosystem. Those slides are just basically rehashes of what I said about what these different parts entail. Again, later on we can, sorry, for those of you taking photographs, I can, or screenshots, I can dwell on those a little bit, or we can send out the deck as well. Okay, next component to elaborate on a little bit is mentorship. We've been running mentorship programs at CodeBase for years, and are super happy that we can roll our sort of experience that we've built up on mentorship out to the rest of the country, and just bring more people in. What we're trying to do is give people mentors at their side. So you're not just going through the education per se. You're not just going through the education per se with a bunch of kind of study buddies or other people doing the same thing, what we call a cohort. There's also the option to speak with a mentor. By mentors, we mean people who have done this stuff. So they're not consultants or agencies. It's just people who've, you know, been operators or still are operators or startup founders, etc. And we're really energized by the fact that the people that have signed up to be mentors with us are just super excited about doing it, and really hoping to help build more startups in Scotland. So that's what we're looking at with mentorship. The benefits of mentorship are massive. Again, we'd like to normalize. Often in ecosystems where they're a bit early stage, people don't realize how important mentorship is. People tend to think that if they see a successful business, that the founder was a kind of generational talent somehow and overcame all the odds and did all this kind of stuff. But it's just never the case. Even historically, you know, people we think were great, you know, geniuses or captains of business or whatever, very often there's people in the background, wives, partners, etc., who help things on the way. Again, just trying to demystify that and normalize that mentorship is a good thing. Cool. I'll go on to the next component then, place. We're in 6 different locations at the moment. Again, I'm not going to try my best not to read out the slides today. Inverness is one of them. We're here in this beautiful building, which I was informed last night was used to be someone's residence. So Jesus, that's a crazy thought. And we really just want to stress that Techscaler is a kind of conceptually on a kind of sliding scale between anything from a kind of pop-up space all the way to a kind of bespoke building. And we're really trying to not fall into the trap of building big shiny stuff. Instead, we're kind of moving into spaces that have been empty or moving into spaces that have been difficult to fill, and just trying to, with a sort of minimum perspective, just try and help people with the best we can and bring all these kind of places together. These are the hubs we have at the moment. You can read them for yourselves. We are in deep conversations to do something in Dumfries and Galloway, or perhaps a different part of the South of Scotland borders region, but that'll come online soon. We're pretty much focused on showing the diversity of the different kind of areas we're in. So we're not beholden to sort of one kind of business model. We've got different partners, universities, banks, councils, etc. So we're trying to be hyper pragmatic and super present wherever we go. The next component then would be community. And community has an obvious kind of overlay in the offline world onto space, as you can see. But community is also an online game and a hybrid game, frankly. As you can see, we're holding the microphone and talking to the room at the same time today. And that's something we will really want to continue. I think the question of what is space, what is community post-COVID is taking a bunch of different kind of turns and twists. We're really trying to bring people together as best we can to make this a kind of institution that's bigger than some of its parts and genuinely takes advantage of network effects. Examples would be running events where we can invite people from one location to visit another location, maybe talk about lessons learned, war stories, etc. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff we're looking to do with community. Again, just basically what I've said. Another thing to perhaps dwell on a little bit longer with regards to community is the events and meetup space. Again, startup culture puts a high premium on events and meetups. It's all about sharing stories. It's all about understanding commonalities, understanding differences, trying to help each other, trying to grow, not doing things in silos. You know, I'm almost 50, and in my lifetime, I kind of grew up with kind of metaphors of, you know, industrial espionage and like James Bond watches and taking photographs and stuff. And, you know, we're really trying to fight against that culture and say, you know, if you want to build a new thing, certainly in the generalist point at the beginning, it's all about sharing ideas and sharing lessons learned, growing together, and then growing into more specificity. Oh, one other thing to dwell on there is partnerships. Again, I hope I'm getting the idea across that we're not here to sort of own the whole stack of everything that goes on. We're genuinely looking to partner with people, genuinely looking to enable and help people, work with people, be additive to wherever we go. Cool. For online community, again, there's a bunch of tools that we use. We've been using those tools for years. We're pretty geeky about that kind of stuff, and I'm really excited about trying to build on the lessons we've learned over the years of running online communities, bringing people together, and having that mesh be powerful and make it easier for people to contribute and collaborate. Whilst we say that, please don't think that we're trying to have a kind of offline Edinburgh centric or whatever reality and then have like sort of online solutions for areas that are not that close to Edinburgh. Again, please interpret our massive presence here today as a sign of intent that whilst online tools are awesome and you know, can really be used to accelerate and genuinely boost offline realities, being places in person just can't be beat. So, and we'll continue to do that. Okay, partnerships. again, you can sort of see all these logos there. There's space for more logos. So if you're not there, if you'd like to be there, if you know someone who'd like to be there, just please get in touch. You know, not to belabor the point, but we're really trying to get across that we're not here to sort of tread on toes or be the kind of wise guys or the kind of too cool for school kids. Genuinely trying to help, genuinely trying to look to dialogue with people, and genuinely trying to add to whatever the existing space looks like. And I think partnership's the best way to do that. We've got good relationships with academia, good relationships with the state via councils, etc., and good connections to big business, and we know tons of startups. So partnerships is really core to what we're trying to do. Cool. So my the phrase I always use is that we're not the startup police. Just really here to help, and really here to collaborate, and yeah, see what we can do to create more startups. We've got a kind of 5-year or so contract from the state to do this, and what keeps us up at night is how many more startups can we create? How many more new companies that are building software can we help? That's really our mission, what we're trying to do. Anything we can do to increase that number, we will pursue. Cool. If you'd like to get in touch, there's the URL. You can visit there, and there's multiple options to reach out to us. And yeah, I'll stop now. That was kind of half speed. So if there's any questions, please feel free to ask.
If the panel could join me on stage, please. So we're going to move into the Q&A session for the morning. Just so you know, I will send out the slides with a post-event email, so everyone will have access to the entire slide deck that you've seen today. I'm going to hand this microphone over to the panel, and I'll be roaming around with the other microphone.
Don't put me in charge of this to start with. It's not a good start.
Do we have any questions?
Thanks. Do you provide help, maybe legal advice and things like setting up contracts? And do you provide help in accountancy and how to set up your accounts and who to speak to? So all the kind of mechanics of setting up make sure you don't do anything stupid when you first start your tech startup. Do you help with that kind of thing?
Actually, that's not going to work, is it? Really good question. Look, I think the kind of classic playbook would say that accounts and legals comes a little bit later. We're really trying to build a kind of that moment. So, you know, the old kind of example in the startup world is we're not writing business plans, we're writing decks and all of that kind of stuff. But once we socialize people with those ideas of what a startup is, how do you create a deck, all that kind of stuff, the gap that we showed earlier, that's where we can signpost to people who can help with business services, because you're right, these things are totally important. So we can signpost to those people. We haven't set something up specifically, but we've also got kind of community checks. So we've been doing this for a while, and the old story is that, you know, you have different startups in the community meeting up, talking about, you know, which business services overpromised or turned out to be more expensive, all that kind of stuff. And we're trying to continue that culture of having a cohort-based, community-based exchange around that, with no real preference of who we signpost to. We're just trying to point to everyone and let the community work out who they can promote themselves or who they can stand behind. Does that answer?
Yeah, it's a sort of self-serve, if you like, but you're facilitating those kind of conversations.
Yeah.
Is that right? Sorry to hog the microphone a little bit here, but do you do, just say a startup has an idea for something, do you do like sense checking of that idea? Because that's the kind of thing I think a lot of startups make a lot of stupid mistakes.
Interestingly, so there's a challenge for us around mentorship for particularly early stage companies who are like the pre-founder stage that Stephen was talking about, and that we get a lot of people who approach us with, I have an idea, what do I do with this idea? Or like, is this a good idea? I think we've learned that we're not in a position to be able to say to a founder whether their idea is a good idea or not, because we haven't done the market research or the customer research that's necessary to understand that, right? So we instead of saying yes or no, that's a great idea, or whatever, we'll encourage them to, or we'll help them with techniques and processes by which they can go out and discover that for themselves. So have you done the market research to understand, to validate it, to test other ideas? Have you focused on the problem enough and interviewed customers or potential customers to understand how this fits, your idea fits in with their life? How would you buy it? All of that kind of stuff. So we teach those playbooks rather than making judgments on other people's industries and expertise. So that's our general approach. So the Startup Basics course that we have, which is an online course which is available to anyone who joins the community, which is open to everyone, is the goal of that is to teach a lot of that kind of thinking and that approach, so that much more learning-based approach to approaching an idea rather than kind of going straight ahead and following your instincts. So yeah.
The initial question. So as was mentioned in the presentation, the tech startup model and best practice and playbooks are still needing socialization and utilization in Scotland. And that's a lot of what we're bringing forward. And we're coaching people through how do you implement it and adopt it when it comes to those like Porter's value chain basics, infrastructure of a business. We're working with the agencies across the country because they do already address how do you form a company, how do you create a balance sheet, how do you think about HR policy, all those basic tenets that are applicable across all business models. And we iterate between in that gap. And to make it more specific to your region, yes, we were working with High, and there's Business Gateway and Digital Boost. Randy's in the room, who's delivered a lot of those modules and is a great influencer across here. And SOCE and Scottish Enterprise. But through placemaking process and approaching each region to say, we're going to be additive. Each head of regional engagement has done stakeholder mapping and resource mapping to say what's already going on here, because we don't want to usurp anything that's been really effective in supporting businesses, whether it's giving them core skills for a business or helping them build community and connect with each other. So it's going to be a unique approach for each, building bridges and tying things together to connect it to a nice cohesive support for someone to build a tech startup. Also being culturally sensitive to say, we don't want to displace anyone or make you feel like some higher up power is swooping into our region and telling us how to do things when we know our region and we know what problems we need solved. We just need you to tell us how to build models and use tools to create solutions for our unique problems. And then, if possible, bring it to the world if it's applicable to more people.
Just one thing to add to that as well. I think, so going back to your original question, Mark, that there are some things that are specific to tech startups. So particularly if you're taking venture backing, that in terms of those kind of very early mistakes that you can make, we do some teaching around that, because we know that we see people make those mistakes and see how avoidable they are. So so just as a very specific example, if you're looking to get venture backing in the future, or venture investment in the future, and you sell more than 50% of your company to a family member because they give you £10,000 in early investment, that's going to be a challenge for you going to go to venture capitalists later on. So that's something you want to address as quickly as possible. So it's things like that that we certainly seek to address through education and through the community as well, by sharing experiences and understanding. So
any other questions in the room?
Yeah, you talked about the 10-week program, and I just wanted to know how much time investment is that for people in that 10 weeks? And also the other question is it mainly for young entrepreneurs or sort of gray-haired entrepreneurs as well?
I'll start with that one. So in terms of time, so we have talking about the two main cohort-based programs that we have. So that would be Startup First Steps and Startup Next Steps. So Startup, both of those programs are designed for people who have decided or are already committing a significant amount of time to their startup. So the online self-paced course Startup Basics is designed for people who are more curious and kind of maybe haven't made that leap or that commitment yet. But the cohort-based programs do have much more time commitment involved. So they involve 3 hours of workshop type activity every week. So that would be with your cohort together at the same time, either on site at a hub. And we're hoping to do a very complicated approach where we have live activity in some or most of our hubs, certainly for the first cohort. Eventually we'll be able to do this across all the hubs. So there'll be you'll be able to attend those in person at the hubs, but there'll also be fully available online as well as a full hybrid approach. So there's those 3-hour workshops every week, but then we also will we don't expect people to go beyond that, but what we will be saying is that you'll get most out of those programs if you then take what you've learned from those workshops and apply them to your business. Now, on the understanding that not every week is going to be immediately relevant content right now for where you were at. So it's not realistic in a 10-week program to run through all the 10 topics that we cover in a 10-week period and expect at the end of it to have a kind of fully formed startup after 10 weeks. It's not an accelerator incubator style thing in the same vein as those things. But so we'll be encouraging activity that looks a little bit like homework, but that applies to your own business, your own idea, as much as possible, to go away and try some of that stuff out, so it kind of cements some of that learning. So there's a few extra hours potentially around that as well. But we're also fully aware that if you're committed to your business, then you want to be working on that. And there's other things that come into play during the week that isn't that goes beyond what we're teaching, and we've got activities to attend to there as well. So
yeah. So you mentioned as if for people with grey hair. I think we all realise that a diverse community is a really successful community, and for the ecosystem to grow and flourish, it has to be diverse. So diversity, equity, and inclusion is really much at the very much at the heart of what we are doing. So regardless of age, sex, gender, socio-economic background, that's it's as all-encompassing as it possibly is. What we will be doing continually is community mapping. So we will be working out who is in our community. But I think more importantly, we'll be identifying who isn't in the community. And we'll be, running that gaps analysis, who hasn't joined and why not, and then developing a strategy to address those issues. So absolutely, it's for absolutely anyone. Audrey, I don't know if you want to, you're a kind of DEI expert. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Well, I think it just echoes what Barry said, is a rich ecosystem has people bringing ideas, and in startup world, you say you get your heart set on a problem rather than a solution. So people from diverse backgrounds are bringing problems that need to be solved. And the more that our ecosystem is addressing that wider array, the more effective we are. And then also we understand it's just, we fully believe it's the right thing to do. And the age spectrum is fully part of that. I think our company itself is reflective of that. We've got people who are in their early 20s and we've got people in their 50s, and we all bring a good vibe to each other and appreciate each other. And when you view that as a microcosm of what could ripple through the community, we see it happen a lot. And there's mentorship and peer support going between so many different ages. And we encourage that actively. I think the gaps analysis, and we'll be collecting more DEI data, including an age bracket, will be helpful for us to say, are we being more effective in that? And pinpointing where we're not being effective in that. And it might be, so I'll reflect on, say, Digital Boost, because it's something you and I understand. We knew a part of what was making it not as inclusive was the marketing. If you see it, you can be it. And then we can say, well, we need to speak to more of our community that are of these groups and have more representative imaging communications that aren't, we're hip Silicon Valley, and saying, no, it needs to be more reasonable, talk to people, use the language they use, or maybe it will be some other aspect. But we'll always be working on it and speaking directly to the community data to help us pinpoint, speak to the community about your lived experience and draw on that. So yeah, just really echoing and expanding on what Barry said. Any other questions?
We're going to take an online question.
Thank you. We've got someone who asked, you made the point that you're aiming this as software development. What about tech companies developing widgets, things such as personal trackers, health monitors, the type of tech which goes hand in hand with software development?
Yeah. So I'm going to hijack that question slightly and widen it out to sort of hybrid startups that include hardware and software, if that's cool. So initially we're focused just on the kind of software piece. but we're cognizant of the fact that this world is changing massively, and frankly, writing software is changing massively. So the kind of boring answer is we're working on it. I think we will stretch to include that kind of stuff. Likewise for deep tech, this is getting pretty sort of specific now. We're looking to build some solutions for that stuff as well. The thing to share is that the space we're in is a very, very fast moving space, and we're trying our best to keep up with the times on the one hand, but on the other hand, also try and widen out the specificity of the solutions we have to a more kind of generalist understanding of what building a business is. So yeah, that would include that.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think so. As Stephen said, we're trying our best to keep up with the times, but actually, in some ways, for us, that's a bit of a losing battle. So one of our kind of principles in the education team is that we'll always be founder-led, and by that, obviously, we founders are our user base, so we're doing user research with founders to understand what they need and in terms of learning outcomes and so on. So that falls within that, but ultimately, that also means from education and within the community, that means founders teaching other founders. And that's a really good way of keeping up with what's happening particularly in areas like hybrid software, hardware development, which moves so quickly and changes so rapidly, as does software. I'm often surprised by our mentors that we have in terms of what they're working on and their ability to very rapidly turn that into learning opportunities for other people. So I learn a huge amount so I'm a mentor as well, and I see it selfishly as a great learning opportunity for me as a mentor. So I learn more from the people that I mentor than I teach them, I think. So, which is great, and I think that's what everyone gets out of it in terms of this kind of really nice kind of two-way relationship. So the community works and should work by we can help identify people who are working on kind of cutting edge stuff or interesting approaches and techniques in this space that other people can I learn from, either in a kind of formal mentorship capacity through our program or in peer-to-peer mentorship that we can set up introductions, or just, the community platform online allows for those kind of conversations to be started by anyone in the community without us needing to be involved directly. So.
But also being founder-led also means that if we do see a kind of trend emergence, as Jim just pointed out, that we can try and build programmatic solutions around that. But yeah, it's just a fast-moving space.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Jim said there, regardless of whether you are hardware, software, product or service, you're very much welcome to join the online community. As I said, a diverse community, it's a successful community. So join the online platform, meet founders from across Scotland, from all the different regions and globally as well. There are a lot of people members of the online community who live out with Scotland. It's really important to get that global perspective. And on the online community, I think at the moment we're sitting roughly 1,400 members from people all over, from all different backgrounds, all different companies. And it's as Jim said, it's a great place for that peer support piece. It's for about swapping war stories, sharing best practice, etc. So regardless of where you are in your journey, and regardless of where you are in your offering, then absolutely please come and join the online community.
Also, I'll preface just almost reiterating what's already been said, and go back to the history of CodeBase, as it was set up as people who were coders, and we're now delivering Techscaler, which gives us a broader remit. But that history of having office spaces, co-working spaces, hot desking spaces that were really built to support people who do office work to develop their products, they could do it through a computer. Is important here. It means that we have a leg up when it comes to software development and supporting people in that way. And Jim and his team are fantastic at that. But it meant that there was a limitation on what kinds of startups we could historically support if they were working in hardware or deep tech that had more of a setup required to explore potentialities, and also, IoT, sensor technology, if it was requiring a lab. But in the place element now, recognizing that when people are developing fantastic software, they will often need a lab space, and hardware, when we have automation and IoT, breeds fantastic software. In the place partnerships, we hope to have 20 hubs by the end of the year. And that's not us managing physical spaces, but partnering with people who have like bioquarters or a lab space at universities, like the Robotarium at Harriet Watt. And UHI has fantastic spaces where they work specifically on hardware, where we can come in. They're already working on these things and great software is coming out of it that we can come in and support with playbooks and education and community. So we're not saying no to hardware. We're saying we need to develop partnerships to better support and connect with people creating great software out of hardware, if that makes sense for y'all. Yeah, cool.
Any other questions?
Hi, I don't know if it was already mentioned or not, and I didn't catch that, but is there already the dates for this program, that when it will run and what's the deadline to apply for it?
I'm going to hand over to Jim.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so the first cohort-based program will be Startup First Steps. That's starting in April. What's the actual date in April, Natalie? 19th of April is the start date. Do we have a closing date for applications, as it were, or we're still working? Can you grab a microphone? Natalie's going to answer this question. You can apply now. So we're working on a landing page which will be live, I think, next week, which will have the full, much more details than we presented on these slides in terms of exactly what you can expect from the course. But yeah, April is the start date for that, and that, as we said, that will be 10 weeks, 3-hour workshop each week from that date. So.
On your slide with your business partners and that you were working with, there was a number of universities listed on that, and I was just wondering, what does that relationship look like with the universities? I mean, you did make a comment there about how you were going to work with UHI, but I'm just curious about that wider connection with the universities and the student body. What does that relationship look like?
Hi. So with a lot of these universities, and this is our approach to most partnerships, is we establish a friendship, we come to understand each other and innovate together on what a partnership process can look like and deliverables. At the moment, for a lot of these universities and soon hopefully colleges as well, because accessibility and inclusion, it's pop-up spaces and some smaller hub spaces. So universities have incubator spaces, they have labs, and they're inviting heads of regional engagement and community teams to come and have a presence where students can meet them if they have ideas, PhD students. A lot of the universities also actively encourage their professors and their lecturers to innovate as well. So that's the first iteration of these partnerships, but we're working on co-creating educational approaches. A couple of universities asked for advice on how they can build tech entrepreneurship across curricula and faculty and make all of faculty champions for entrepreneurial mindset. So it works together with bringing people into academia and championing innovation and people having their own launchpad to build something. Then also we're building specific programs with universities, which I will hand over to Jim.
Yeah, so we've just recently run a course with the University of Edinburgh, which is the first outside accredited elective course that they've completely outsourced to a corporate or a corporate sector partner, I believe. So that we're actually running that course right now. So that's something that's going on. That's not a Techscaler thing. So that's not funded by Techscaler. That's just a direct CodeBase University of Edinburgh partnership. But that's indicative of the kind of thing we want to do much more of. So we're kind of taking our the work we've done on education programs and working out how we can package those up for student audiences, and not just in universities but in colleges, as already mentioned. I think the other thing to mention, which I'll maybe hand over to Barry for, is that the other side of this is community, and we're currently kind of working out how we can present a community offering to the student body in particular. I think we need to be a little bit not wary, but we need to be very clear about how that works in terms of how that integrates with the kind of founder-led community that we have. But Maybe I'll hand over to Barry to talk about that a little bit more.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, so before I was in this role, I headed up CodeBase in Stirling. We've got a really good relationship with University of Stirling, where together we partnered on a lot of programs together, a lot of events as well. It was really important for us to forge links with the uni, to encourage a lot of the students, to encourage that entrepreneurial mindset from a very early stage. Talent is one of the key ingredients for a startup ecosystem. So engaging with the student body was really, really important. I think that's something, I don't know if Mark, if you want to add to this, but that's something we want to do across the regions, whether that's from an event strategy point of view, whether that's joint workshops. It could look like anything. I don't know if you have spoken to anyone here. Or...
I have. I can take over.
Thank you.
Yeah, on a regional level, we've got some great work. I've recently come from UHI. We've got some great work being done at UHI and some fantastic sources of entrepreneurship there. And I think we'd be quite keen to develop that across curriculum wherever we can, because the region here is so diverse that, we don't have these big software development companies. We do have a lot of high growth companies, but innovation really comes from anywhere in the Highlands. So the idea that we can spread that entrepreneurial spirit around tech cross curriculum is something that we'd really look to work on. And we've spoken to, we're in partnership talks with UHI. We've spoken to Create, who are really keen to collaborate as well, and really push that kind of entrepreneurial spirit throughout everything that UHI are doing. So yeah, the more we can connect through the 13 academic partners, and kind of grow that grassroots spirit, yeah, that's something we're looking to do.
Thanks, Mark. I think one of the things we're trying to communicate is that free university education in Scotland is almost like our equivalent to a sovereign wealth fund, and people don't really sort of see that. So what we're trying to do is take that abundance of human capital that can, get really good education for free, which is, probably will turn out to be some historical blip or something, and really try and expose as many of them as possible to a path of entrepreneurship if they wish to choose it. And Techscaler is really just there to sort of de-risk that journey for them and say, hey, you've gone through a sort of first principles / some kind of specific domain education piece. Now let us expose you to a bunch of skills that can help you take that knowledge and that understanding, that learning, and build something new with it rather than join something existing. And within that, Audrey, Jim, Mark, Barry, we've been doing that on individual levels with different universities in different locations, but we're looking to build on that and do more. It's just kind of early days, and we're also aware that there's all sorts of programs. We don't want to tread on toes, but essentially trying to plug into that sovereign wealth fund we have and build structures around it to introduce people to entrepreneurship in a way that's de-risking for them. And anything that anyone wants to do with us there, we're game.
Another question from online.
Thank you. What would you say is the strength of the Highlands and Islands region in Techscaler world?
Oh wow, that's a huge question. The strength of the Highlands and Islands in the Techscaler world. The Highlands for years historically, we've done more with less. Time and time again, we've done more with less. I was speaking to a potential partner yesterday, actually, and was explaining to him that for years, the Highlands and Islands Fire Brigade looked nothing like any other fire brigade in the UK because they had to, smaller budgets, less resources. They had to be innovative in what they did with their vehicles and their equipment and their processes and their people. So the Highland landscape is very different to any other landscape in Scotland. It is harder to operate here. There is less here, and that's changing slightly. We are starting to see more and more development. We've got some great opportunities around, island growth deals, green Freeport deals. We're seeing city deals. So there is some investment coming. There is some assistance there, but we still have to do more with less every time. We don't have the same resources that Edinburgh has. So I suppose our real strength out of that is the fact that we have had to deal with that hardship, and we have had to deal with, you know, with less. And from that, you know, real meaningful innovation comes from that hardship that we endure. And I really think that you know, Techscaler is all about letting people foster the ideas. It's not just about people who are coming out of university and spinning out and they've done a course that's given them the skills in coding or software. It's about anybody who sees a problem and anybody who decides, do you know what? I'm just going to go and fix it. The best example I can give you of that so far came yesterday, speaking to the same partner who put me in touch with somebody who worked in forestry. And they got annoyed that they couldn't watch Netflix on their break in the middle of nowhere. So they just decided to go and build a satellite broadband receiver in their shed, learn the coding that was required for it, and are now looking to come on board with us and help build that product. Somebody in the Highlands went, do you know what? Elon Musk hasn't got here yet with Starlink. I'm gonna just build it. That's the incredible strength of the Highlands, I think. You know, innovation and a can-do attitude.
Yeah, there's also, just a show of hands, have people heard of a startup called Stripe? Yeah, so Stripe are worth, I don't know, $100 billion or something like that. The coolest startup on the planet at the moment. 2 Irish founders who came from rural Ireland. And the reason I'm mentioning Stripe is, so I think employees number 5 and 6 at Stripe were from a company called Interstate. Anyone heard of Interstate? So Interstate were based just outside of Inverness. So actually, they were building a kind of project management tool back then. So that's a real world example that no one really knows about, or very few people, whatever. That there's just talent everywhere, and you know, it's just about plugging that talent into infrastructure that can help it sing. So the strengths that the region has here is the strength that the whole country has. It's just, you know, people who've got a desire, people who want to build something new, and just bringing them together into a cohort and helping them share war stories and just learn from each other. So I think we can find these people everywhere. It's really just trying to give them some kind of base or some kind of something they can plug into that can help them, you know, just on that journey, and normalize that journey is a viable thing. Sometimes I worry that we're positioning Techscaler as a kind of extra thing to a world that's doing really well with the incumbent reality. But the reality is we're not. Like, the incumbent stuff's terrible. And like, we really need to build new stuff. It's not like, oh, can we find some new people who can build it? Like, we need to build new stuff. And there's more startups than ever before. And it's just a sign of the times that we live in that, you know, my favorite stat on this, one of the few ones I can remember off by heart, because the numbers are great, is that in the 1960s, the average lifespan of an S&P 500 company was about 60 years. In 2023, it's about 17 years. So everything's just moving faster and faster. The incumbent things are moving faster and faster, and having shorter and shorter lifespans. So it's incumbent upon us to just build new stuff. And as Audrey said earlier, these ideas have to come from all over the place. There's, you know, paucity of ideas is the saddest thing. And we're really just here to show people that ideas can come from anywhere. And there's a bunch of playbooks that you can plug into, a bunch of people you can meet and talk to, a bunch of ways of seeing the world, a bunch of community partners that will make you not feel alone or weird if you're doing something different, because the existing world's not in a great shape. So we need new solutions. Yeah.
Sorry, can I just add very quickly, being part of Techscaler, regardless of where you are in the country, if you're in the Highlands and Islands, it gives you access to that national network as well. So I like to talk about equity of opportunity. So regardless of where you are in the country, if you're in Wick or Wigton, then you should be able to access that same level of support, whether, it took me a wee while to think about that. I was trying to think of another W. I got to Wick and then I thought, where else? Wester Hales, the West End of Glasgow. You should still have that same level of access to education support and community support and access to meetups virtually and offline as well. It's we also want to work on, despite the fact that Techscaler is, as you saw from an earlier slide, divided the country into 7 regions. We really want to encourage that cross-pollination piece between all the regions. It's learning from your peers. If you are in Wick, for example, it's learning from your peers in Glasgow and Edinburgh and Dumfries and Stornoway. It's not a zero-sum game between the regions. I think at one of the other events we mentioned competition is good between the regions, but rivalry is bad. So absolutely, regardless of where you are.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the panel. We've got loads of time afterwards for a bit more networking in the room. I'd like to say thank you very much to everyone who's joined us online. You'll be sent out the slides just as everyone in the room will be. Thank you to everyone for taking time out of your morning to join us in person. Thank you to the panels. Thank you to Wasp. Thank you to Anaïs and Kostis for running the hybrid session so smoothly. Our next event is next week in Dundee. That'll be streamed online as well, and you're welcome to join in. And please head on over to www.techscaler.co.uk for more information. That's it for this session. Thank you for joining us, and please feel free to take as many bacon rolls and sausage rolls in those little blue bags at the back of the room. Thank you, everyone.